In a previous video, I talked about Tai Chi teachers who hide the real instruction. Tonight, I'm going to talk about why for many years now, I have taught openly and publicly to all of my students. I've been married to my wonderful wife of 25 years. I was married once before that for a fairly short period of time. One thing that person did for me that has been a benefit to me and ideally to others, many others, to my students, has been that she saw that I was teaching the way that I have been taught to teach, which is there's a public class and then there's the real class, and then most people don't get the real secrets. You give out one every once in a great while, and then you watch them work with that for months, maybe a year, and then you give them another real thing, and then you keep giving them the stuff that's the public information that most people get to see. And one day she said to me on the self-defense stuff, if these people, any of them, are serious about harming somebody, you know, first thing she really asked is, why are you hiding it like that? And I said, well, my teachers taught me to hide it like that. Why did they do that? Well, they were afraid with this serious martial arts side that they would really do damage to somebody and really harm somebody with it. And they didn't want them hurting people or to be responsible for people hurting people. And she said, and she had done just a little bit of training, if they're really wanting to harm somebody that bad, are they really going to put in 6 months, a year, 2 years, even 3 months of really hard, dedicated training? Or are they just going to get a baseball bat or a gun? And I thought about that, and I realized, we were in Florida, Tampa, where you can get a carry permit and get a gun, and even if without one, you could probably go to a gun show, at least at that time, and other places, and get a gun. And baseball bats and crowbars and motor vehicles, cars, trucks, and all sorts of other things, knives of all different shapes and sizes. And if somebody really wants to do somebody in, they're not going to go, okay, I'll be back and see you in 3 or 4 months. They're just going to go get the weapon and go to it. And I realized she was right about that, and that you still ideally take some care in who your students are. But once you've seen that they're really going to do the work and put in the time and want to better themselves this way, why would you hold out on them? If somebody wants to do real damage to somebody, they're going to get the gun or the knife or the baseball bat, and they're going to do it anyways. And they're going to be able to get that today very quickly, very easily, and they don't have to have any training for that. And with that, I realized she was right about that thing, and I started teaching. I just basically took everything that was the public stuff, other than, there are some public things that are essential and you should have, and that the public school has them, and the secret closed door hidden material is the same stuff. But then it's what you're doing with that and how you're using that and the understandings about all that and how you apply all of that. That's all this hidden secret stuff, and then the little nuances that make it go from being like you got a pea shooter to you got a bazooka. It really is that kind of a difference, or from a pea shooter to a grenade. I mean, it is a gigantic kind of a difference in what you can do with that knowledge. And so I started teaching it openly and really doing that, and I immediately found within months that my skill level increased, that my students were getting this, that they were outdoing other students from other schools, that I didn't have problems of students misusing the material. And so although I still was careful, and at that time, much more so, and watchful of who I was teaching and that kind of a thing, I started teaching the secret real stuff. And within a year, I quit teaching anything that wasn't the real, what people would consider the secret, hidden, high-level stuff. Anyways, and then in 1993, 94, I went to China a couple different times for 3 weeks each time, studying from the time I got up to the time I went to bed, only taking out time to eat. And on the very first trip, it was a Xingyi and Bagua trip. And they're both internal arts, like Tai Chi is an internal art. Xingyi being very aggressively martial. And what the teachers had been searched for the year before we went, and they found the best Xingyi teachers and Bagua teachers they could find who had the art would be most open to teaching at a high level and be most open to teaching the art and actually showing it. And so they found the teachers that they felt were the best ones for this, and very well-known teachers and lineages on that, and we went. And the Xingyi teacher, where we went, taught the first day, and he taught the first 5 moves. So like the first move, Yi, R, San, and he's walking through, and he sees my group is, and there was about 28 of us. We're right with him doing exactly what he's doing because we all knew that movement already. And so that way, he turned around and came back, and he saw that, and kind of you could see an okay, and we went through the other moves, and he had about a dozen senior students. The senior most had been with him for 50 years with him. He had brought them from Shanxi province, where they live, and had them to work with our group. And so at lunch on the first day, he realized that our group were trained. Most of them were Xingyi teachers here in the States. And he thought he was going to spend 3 weeks teaching us the 5 basic moves and a form or 2, and then that was it. And hey, have fun, go home, and play with what we teach people in the first couple weeks. First couple months, the beginner material. And he realized that we all had that, and that unless he was going to keep doing that with us, and we weren't there for that, you know, he had agreed to teach some things. And he went and met with the leader of the group, the person who put the group together, and told him that he wanted to go home, back to Shanxi. And the group leader said, okay, why, what's up? And what he was able to, and he didn't say it, but what he was able to glean was the guy didn't want to teach us. He didn't realize the knowledge we came with, and he wanted to hide the information, and that we all knew enough that he was going to have a hard time doing that. And so he basically begged and begged to be allowed to go home. He would leave his senior students. And in China, there's a thing where if you're a senior master, and I've learned from you when you're a senior master, and I don't get skills out of that, if I've really put real time in with you, or I came with skills, it's a loss of face. It's an embarrassment. But let's say I'm that senior master, and I leave you with some students of mine, and then they got taught badly and wrong, and some other things there, and that comes out, oh, my bad students, oh, they shouldn't have done that. And I don't lose face. They lost some face. Oh, bad students, I'll take care of it for you. And too bad for you, you didn't get the skills you paid for. And so he tried to leave. The leader of the group said, you know what, take all your guys, take them with you. We'll find a different teacher here. We were in Beijing. We'll pay you for the time that's been put in. Guy said, no, I'll stay. Next day at lunch, same conversation. Next day at lunch, the same conversation, because every day that he went, he saw it was worse than what he had thought in terms of what the skill was that our group actually had and what we could do. So so at that point, on the third one, he said, okay, if we have the conversation again, I'm just going to pay you for the time that you've put in so far. We're going to be done, and you know, we'll get different teachers. Fine. So they went off and had a meeting, the Xingyi teacher and his students. And they came back from that meeting, and we saw something new every 15 minutes like clockwork the whole time. There are over a dozen ways to hide information from people. One of those ways is to overwhelm the people with information. Since they couldn't not show the real skills, what they did was they decided to throw it at us so fast that most of us wouldn't be able to remember it. Like that. And so then it went that way the rest of the time. At some point there, about the 5th day in, we're practicing in between their teaching sessions in the courtyard, and all of these disciples, when I say all of them, most of them, were off to the side of the courtyard watching us practice, smoking, pointing and laughing. And I know not much Chinese, but just enough that what they were doing was going, those stupid Americans think they're actually getting something, and we're handing it to them so fast that they're going to have a hard time getting it, ha, ha, ha. And every time any of us, by the way, the cameras at that time were like VHS, which means they were big, and I had one with me, and so did some other folks. Every time we would try to film one of them really doing something, they would go from being, let's just say, moving, to they would go like that. And so you couldn't get them all, and then they asked not to be filmed. And at some point, my camera actually, not the VHS, it was too big, everybody would have seen it. I had a regular camera with me, and that disappeared. It basically got stolen because I had pictures of things going on. Okay. When they were doing this, and we were working our butts off to get the material and to maintain the material and to learn the material and to really get the internal stuff that was going on, it got me angry, to be blunt. And I decided right then and there that the highest level secrets I could get my hands on, if I could, I was going to teach people who were Americans that information. We also had a teacher when we went on that trip, a Bagua teacher, that on the third or fourth day got corralled into a corner by some other people from his Bagua school. He was like he was a senior master, but there were other people who had learned from one of the other senior masters. They saw us working in the courtyard with him. On his way home, they corralled him into a doorway and told him that 2 of them were secret police, which they were, and that they would arrest him on trumped-up charges if he was out there in the courtyard teaching us again. There was a great bias against teaching the real stuff to Americans. And I saw this, it was clear as a bell, and I really came to the deep conclusion that I would get the highest skills I could get and that I would pass them on to Americans. I am committed to spreading the real internal power skills of Tai Chi far and wide. The whole thing only works if I can get you to a high level. It doesn't matter what I can do. It only matters what my students can do and what their students can do. What we can actually have that's actually part of the style being passed down that becomes something that benefits people, both for their health and for their own self-development and, of course, self-defense. When I was in China, the other thing that I saw was that they had one television station. This is the first time, same thing, Beijing. One television station that was an American television station. All the rest of them only spoke Chinese. That television station had more shows on it that had craziness going on than I had ever seen on American TV at that time. Now, today's world's a little different, and there's 500 channels and nothing on, and you can see all kinds of craziness. But at that time, in the early 90s, cable was a thing, but let me put it this way. The tamest show they had on their TV was Dallas, like Who Shot JR and what money did they get from that. And it was all about rich, greedy, crazy, sexually crazed, what money did they have kind of people. And every show did this in some way, and like I said, it was over the top. There were shows on there that I had never seen before, have never seen since, and never heard of, and it was every wild kind of thing you can think of that if you were in Beijing as a person living there, Chinese, watching this, you would think Americans are nuts. And it was designed to do that, to convey that message. And so you could tell with people who lived there, in general, they were respectful, but they treated us like we're really rich, crazy people that have too much money and that can't be trusted to not do horrible things like shoot people from behind a door and do it so that we can somehow inherit a bunch of more money and do other crazy things. Anyways, you get the idea. So with that, like I said, there's real skills, and with that, my goal is to help get those real skills out there to you. I am going to be doing some of these talks a bit more regularly. I'm going to tell some of the other different Kung Fu stories and some of the different travels and people that I've interacted with and situations that I've been in, like the ones I told you here. But there are other things and quite a number of other things. And I'm going to talk about the real world and the real aspects of Tai Chi and use some of those things that I have seen, experienced, learned, done, taught, and even that students have done. And I've got students who have done some fairly impressive things after spending 6 months, year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years with me as a student really learning the stuff because of it being the real skills. So I'm hoping to be able to pass that on to you. And with this, the question what our group came to on this is, what else regarding the martial arts and Tai Chi would you like me to talk about here, and what would you like us to talk about next? And if you give us an idea, or do I have any stories about, at 42 years of doing this, I probably do, especially when it comes to personalities and the art and different kinds of things in the art and different kinds of skill sets. And then those skill sets in real use or being demonstrated, but again, in situations that aren't always so pleasant, so that you can see what really works and what doesn't, all that stuff. So give us an idea of what you'd like to see, and we will try to, or hear about, and we'll try to do it here for you, and thanks for watching.